In 1999, Morpheus offered Neo a choice between a red pill and a blue pill. In 2018, this country fractured between red and blue. In 2022, I'm here to tell you that if you really want the truth, more voters are neither red or blue. Yet, they have no representation, no choice, and no options. They have to choose between candidates chosen by the red people or the blue people. I'm David Esrati, and I'm running for Congress as an American, as in red, white, and blue. I'm a veteran, an activist, and a small businessman. I'm asking you to join me in reminding the professional politicians in Congress who their bosses are. I support ranked choice voting, campaign finance reform, and a verified voter information system, all so we can stop having the best politicians money can buy. It's time to elect a veteran who will work for you, no matter what color they want to label you. Please go to electesrati.com and learn more. I'm David Esrati, and I approve this message. Jurassic Park, you thought those little baby dinosaurs were cute until they turned into out-of-control carnivores. That's sort of what happens to government when we elect people based on very expensive advertising campaigns and propaganda. I'm David Esrati. I'm a veteran and a small businessman running for Congress. You don't want professional ad people and pollsters to sway your vote. All those hot-button issues like gun control, abortion, borders are all politicized to stop you from voting rationally. And thinking rationally seems to be in short supply these days. Most Americans have been voting against their own best self-interest for a long time because we've allowed money to buy our leaders. 1 million Americans died in the last 2 years because our leaders couldn't lead. It wasn't that hard. Mask, distance, test, and then vaccinate. In an instant, we had billions to spend on healthcare for COVID, when for years we've been told we can't provide healthcare for everyone equally in this country. That's an unintended consequence of the pandemic. If you think about it, our government can pretty much do whatever it wants, or what the people who buy our politicians tell our leaders to do. We also had a ton of money to prop up businesses. The next thing you know, it turns out that a living wage was not only possible, but necessary. As a small businessman who won't sell you out to corporate interests and lobbyists, I can tell you that it's time to fully understand the consequences of companies like Amazon, Facebook, and Google and their effect on small business, and to remind you that small business is the #1 creator of jobs in this country. So this next election, don't trust this ad or any other political ad. Do your homework and think before you vote. It's time to put this ad man in Congress because I know that the best advertising is based on the truth, not the size of the budget or payola. Or you can just vote based on who has the money to buy their way into Congress and live with the consequences. I'm David Esrati, and I approve this message. Hi, I'm David Esrati. I'm running to be your congressman if you live in OH-10, which is right now Montgomery County, all Greene County, and parts of Clark County. In 2022, that might be slightly different because the Ohio Redistricting Commission never really forced anybody to do their jobs, and Ohio is still basically a red state, thanks to what we call gerrymandering. So, gerrymandering is where the politicians pick their voters, and antitrust leads to where the corporations pick their politicians. Now, a lot of people say, oh, it started with Citizens United, where it basically became corporations became a person and could donate as much as they want to campaigns. But no, it really started way before that, back in the 80s, thanks to Ronald Reagan and his big push for deregulation. We used to have stringent rules against owning too much of a good thing because, you know, too much of a good thing isn't always a good thing. Bigger isn't always better. And, you know, it started with FDR fighting it during the Great Depression. And all those rules and regulations that Republicans think government is incompetent on enforcing, well, when they lifted all of those, we started seeing small banks get gobbled up by bigger banks until you end up with a few really big banks. And then what do? They start inventing new financial instruments because they can. And we have credit default swaps, which basically is insurance against bad debt, which, that doesn't make sense. And 2009, the bottom fell out. And guess what? Lots of you lost your homes, but the bankers, they didn't lose their jobs. They didn't go directly to jail. They did not pay $200. So, what else has there been that has grown larger and larger? Well, if you look at food production, there are 3 or 4 major meat packers in the country that control something like 60 to 70% of the meat that goes on supermarket shelves. And they set the prices not only to you, but the prices they pay to the beef farmers. Same thing goes in the chicken industry. Same thing goes in corn. It's all been vertically integrated. It's sort of like the medical system where we talked about not too long ago, where my little shoulder surgery, the guy billed, there was another bill that came in, by the way, $110,000, yet the VA only paid $5,400. And that's what is happening to prices right now. The government has no ability to wage any kind of price controls or stop people from raising prices and making ungodly money. We have no control over how banks operate anymore other than to raise interest rates on the Fed. Basically, they can do whatever they want. We've taken away all the tools to stop things. We used to have 4 major cell phone providers. Now we have 3. Before long there'll be 2, and maybe we'll just get down to 1. Why not? It's crazy. In other countries, they pay less for cell service. They pay less for cable TV. They pay less for every medication they ever get through prescription. They pay less for health care. They pay less for their government. And they definitely pay less than for defense, because we love to spend money on weapons, especially my opponent, Mike Turner. And segue into today is July 15th, and it was the deadline for campaign finance reporting. And we haven't seen Mr. Turner's report yet, but mine's there, and people will pick it apart all kinds of different ways. There'll be some surprises on some of the people who gave me some money, and so just to let you know, as a viewer, you can find out right now that Dr. Dan Curran, President Emeritus of the University of Dayton, gave me $1,000. And you will find that my good friend Kevin Harrington, who is retired, used to run Downtown Dayton Opticals, been in for a little more than that. My friend Yaromir Steiner, who built the Green and Easton, and the banks down in Cincinnati and Liberty Town Center, gave me $1,000. There's one other person who gave, there are 2 other people that have given large sums, but they came in after the deadline. There's a bunch of $500 donations. But when you look at Mike Turner's campaign finance report, I'm sure you will see plenty of $2,900 maximum donations. So, glad to see my friend Bill Mavar is online and asking a question. Any of you are welcome to do that. Bill says, can you think of even one instance where the Reagan-style deregulation actually was good for the consumer and the country? He says, I can't, and neither can I. It has not been good for you and me. Prices in general are now out of our control. Just think about grocery stores and grocery chains and how few independents there are left. In Dayton, we have basically Dots Market and Dorothy Lane Market and a few smaller ones that don't quite count as supermarkets, but they're serving the community, especially along Gettysburg. There's a couple like Nabil's, but almost everything is a chain now. The building I'm in right now was a corner grocery store, And from 1928 to 1930, it was a Kroger store. Because back then, you joined Kroger like part of an alliance, like a buying co-op. They didn't own you, and there were lots of them. In fact, there were grocery stores on probably 8 corners in this neighborhood. One you went to for meats, one you went to for produce, one you went to for baked goods, and you could walk there every day and get stuff fresh. I'm not sure that big grocery stores have been anything to brag about. Driving 5 miles or 6 miles to get to a big grocery store and then walking a mile through it isn't as fulfilling as going in a small little corner shop and picking your stuff up and getting it fresh. So back to the corporations and their growth and Mike Turner's campaign finance report. Over the last 20 years, we added everything up, and his number one donor was, I think, Boeing, and then General Dynamics and Northrop Grumman and the home builders. And it'll be interesting to see how it all tops out. But basically, what these people have done is they've bought it's a lot cheaper to buy 535 politicians than it is to actually compete with the small startup and everything else. So, because our system allows our politicians basically to become elected through auctions to the highest bidder, we've also allowed the people who buy our politicians to set our prices, set their own rules, and be anti-competitive. And the whole idea of capitalism is not to end up winning in Monopoly. It's to get more businesses to compete with each other so we do get lower prices. That's not what's happening these days. As a small businessman, I can tell you, there isn't anything that we have an advantage over large corporations. We can't buy health insurance cheaper. We can't spread out our costs of payroll or any of these other costs out across a larger base. We can't get tax breaks the way they do. We can't get incentive payments from government we just gave a small company called Intel $2 billion to build out outside of Columbus. Where's the part for small business? If anything, if you put me in Congress, I guarantee you small business will be recognized and given the same opportunities as big business by large companies. Let's bring back antitrust and fix some of these things. Another story I read not too long ago in the New York Times was how the shipping industry from China across the Pacific has been consolidated into 3 major companies, and they're the ones holding out the shipping containers and keeping the costs high. 3 companies controlling all the shipment from Asia to the United States. Does that sound like free markets or competition to you? We could fix this. It's pretty simple. We've done it before, but we're afraid to now because, again, the people you have elected aren't working for you. They're working for their corporate bosses. So it is time to wrap this up. I don't see any other questions. My name is David Esrati. I'm running for Congress in Ohio 10. If you want to find out more, go to electesrati.com. If you'd like to donate, electesrati.com/donate. If you'd like to find out more about the things I've been talking about since 2005, up at the top of Elect Esrati, there's a button on the site that says Truth to Power. It'll lead you to some of my greatest hits of citizen journalism that exposed corruption in Montgomery County, including the flow chart that shows how Turner and the Downtown and the Dayton Development Coalition and his donors all were meshed together like clockwork. One other thing you'll see in my campaign finance report is I don't send my money to out-of-state political consultants. I spend it all right here in Dayton with an ad agency that I know and trust, my own. I never bill for my own work, but my employees that do the work, I have to pay them. We bill out at standard rates. And basically, I get things cheaper for my campaign than any other candidate. Never had a problem when Mike Turner was paying the Turner Effect, his wife's firm, for work, or that he was sending work off to the Army Corps of Engineers, so you shouldn't have a problem with it either. I am not running to do anything but make Mike Turner very uncomfortable. and hopefully to beat him and represent you and small business in Congress so that you don't get sold out to big corporate interests and get shammed and screwed and broke because some CEO thought he was supposed to make 1,000 times what his average employee makes. That's wrong. We're going to fix it. The election's November 8th. We'll be back next week, Monday through Thursday. I'm not sure we'll be able to do Friday afternoon. We'll see. But we will be on Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. live streaming right here. Thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notify bell so that you can see these things live when they happen and ask questions like my friend Bill Mavar. And I don't know, there's somebody else on here too. Welcome, but I didn't see your comment. So if you got any questions or you want to talk about something next week, put it in the comments below. I see them all, and we'll be on Monday and talk about them. Thank you. Have a great weekend.